everyone. Welcome to CBR Saga, CBR's one and only podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by the TVA. The TVA would like to remind you that please, if you're thinking about time traveling, don't. Just don't. You may think it's a good idea, you may think you got it all under control and you'll just make a tiny change, but you'll screw it up. Trust them. This has been your friendly TVA announcement. But enough about corporate sponsorship, let's get into our episode. Today's saga will finally answer the age-old question of who would win between the Avengers and the Fantastic Four. We have a fun debate for you today where we will pit 4 Avengers against Marvel's first family to see who will come out on top. We'll start with Mr. Fantastic versus Professor Hulk, then pit Spider-Man against Invisible Woman, the new Captain America will fight the Human Torch, and finally we'll have The Thing versus Hawkeye. Oh man, such great matchups. It's going to be a fun time. I am joined by my co-host Nick. Nick, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Jacoby, and you're right. It is going to be a fun time indeed.
So in this matchup overall, Nick, between the Avengers and the Fantastic Four, who do you got and why?
I think it's pretty close, but I think the Avengers take the edge. I just think they have more power on their team. I think they have more experience on their team. And everything the Fantastic Four has, I think the Avengers have that and more.
See, I disagree with you because I think the Fantastic Four is just this great fighting unit that has this great balance of powers that work really well in 1v1 fights. And I guess we're going to prove that right now because let's get into our first matchup because we have Mr. Fantastic versus Professor Hulk. And I think I'll start this one. So I think on a power level, Mr. Fantastic has an advantage because I think elasticity beats pure brute strength. I mean, Professor Hulk is strong and all, but that won't be a match for the versatility that Mr. Fantastic brings to the fight. What do you think?
I would sort of agree, because I was thinking about this, and if the Hulk were to punch Mr. Fantastic, it might not hurt all that much. He could just, bend, it would concave his chest in, and then he could just pop right back out to normal. However, pure brute force has hurt Mr. Fantastic in the past. We've seen in Rise of the Silver Surfer, he gets crushed by that piece of debris and gets stuck behind the thing, and, that hurts him. He can still go on fighting, so that's not how Professor Hulk is going to beat him. Luckily, Mr. Fantastic isn't just facing the Hulk. He's facing, honestly, probably one of the more understated characters in the MCU. He's facing Professor Hulk. It's literally Bruce Banner's genius with the Hulk's incredible strength. I think Professor Hulk doesn't need pure brute strength to beat Mr. Fantastic. He can find a way to weaken him and then use his strength to finish the job.
You're talking about the smarts and pairing that with the brute strength, but hello, Mr. Fantastic is the smartest man in the universe. I think he's definitely smarter than Bruce Banner. I think he's smarter than even Tony Stark. I think Reed Richards' intelligence is going to be one of the big deciding factors here, because if you're going up against brain power and putting Bruce Banner versus Reed Richards, then Reed Richards is going to come out on top. You say that maybe Mr. Fantastic will get hurt eventually by the brute strength of the Hulk. And while I think his elasticity can at least absorb some of that, maybe Mr. Fantastic will come up with this device or anything to sort of restrain it. So I think if it's a battle of mind and a battle of brains, then it's going to come out in Mr. Fantastic's favor.
So that's the thing. I don't think it's just a battle of minds. I will give you the edge. I think Mr. Fantastic is probably just a little bit smarter than Bruce Banner. Just a little bit. But Bruce Banner has the strength to back it up because it's not just a battle of minds. If Bruce can figure out a way to freeze Mr. Fantastic like Victor Von Doom has done, and then one punch from the Hulk and Mr. Fantastic will shatter. He doesn't need to be smarter than Mr. Fantastic. He just needs to be smart enough to get him into that kind of a trap where he can actually do some damage. I don't think Mr. Fantastic, while he has the mind power, he has no, move. He has no way to actually take down the Hulk.
He has no move or no way to take down the Hulk. I just don't think that's true. I think Mr. Fantastic can bend his body and stretch it in a way that subdues the Hulk, that locks him down, that traps him from moving. He can turn into a liquid and choke the Hulk. There's more ways to beat the Hulk than just beating him up. And I think that's what Mr. Fantastic's skill set totally plays to. It's about subduing the Hulk and stopping him. And maybe if the Hulk was actual Hulk, then he could have a chance because then he could bust out of it. But the problem with Professor Hulk is, yes, he has the mind of Bruce Banner, but he also has the personality of Bruce Banner. He doesn't have that unbridled rage that probably would benefit the regular Hulk in order to beat anything that Mr. Fantastic throws at him. I think Bruce Banner would get flustered. Bruce Banner would get overwhelmed. Bruce Banner wouldn't know how to use the strength to the best of his abilities in order to beat Mr. Fantastic.
I disagree, and I think we're dealing with a Hulk that we really haven't seen before. If you think about Bruce Banner, he's never been allowed to be angry, because the second he turns angry, he turned into the Hulk. Now Bruce has done something incredible where he's already given himself. He put the brains and the brawn together, so getting angry won't make him lose control anymore. We don't know what Bruce is like when he's angry, and now that he's in control of his strength, Bruce getting angry, if Mr. Fantastic just ties him up, I think Bruce would actually rip Mr. Fantastic in half.
All right, well, it's not always up to us. You guys let us know in the comments who you think would win as we move on to our next fight. Let's just get into it. We're going to have the Invisible Woman versus Spider-Man. I think this is an interesting matchup. Both have very interesting skill sets. Nick, why do you think Spider-Man would take this over Invisible Woman?
This is an interesting fight because these are two people with very, very different skill sets. Unfortunately, unfortunately for the Invisible Woman, I think Spider-Man takes this because he has the skill set to overcome the Invisible Woman. Her tactic is going to be all about evasion and making sure Spider-Man can't find her. But Spider-Man has his Spidey sense, and the second he gets a location on her, he's going to be able to web her up, take him down, and he out-strengths her. He has way more strength than she does. He's going to be able to overpower her the second he gets within range.
I think strength is a relative term because, yes, Invisible Woman's name is Invisible Woman, so she's invisible, and that doesn't work with Spidey's, spider sense, and I'll give you that. But Invisible Woman also has a completely different skill set, which is her force field. She is able to create these force fields, these very powerful containing devices, these very powerful attacks, all within the force field nature. And I think that's what's going to give Invisible Woman the edge, because what these force fields like to do to their opponents is limit them, is stop them, is box them in. And I think that's kind of Spider-Man's weakness. Spider-Man is a very agile fighter. He's a very all over the place fighter. That's kind of like his thing. His dexterity and his agility is great. But when you fight a hero like Invisible Woman who can trap you with these force fields and kind of box you in a place where you can't go and makes it a very direct line of attack, then I think that's what's going to help Invisible Woman win this fight.
So she's got to catch him first. And if you're telling me catching Spider-Man is an easy feat, I'm going to call you a liar. I think Spider-Man will have a trick or two up his sleeve because he is a clever kid. We've seen that Invisible Woman's ability to use her force field takes a lot out of her. It takes a lot of focus. It takes a lot of concentration. If Spider-Man can distract her with, like his body and she uses a force field to try and trap him somewhere, all he's got to do is shoot a web grenade right next to her and she won't be able to focus on two things at once with two different force fields. I think Spider-Man has the brains to come up with some kind of diversion like that will distract Invisible Woman to use her force fields in the wrong place long enough for him to just get one blow on her, and I think that would take the fight.
I just think you're underestimating Invisible Woman's ability to control force fields. Yes, it takes a lot out of her, but just for the fact that she can create a force field around herself to protect her and around where Spider-Man is to kind of guide him into any sort of trap, into any sort of locked-in area, and just to maybe suffocate the life out of him. She puts a force field around Spider-Man. Spider-Man's not strong enough to break out of that. He could shoot all the webs he wants in that force field. He's going to be locked down, and yes, his spider sense will help him, but I think his spider sense is difficult to kind of understand exactly where the danger is coming from. Like, he goes like, oh, danger is coming, danger is here, but that doesn't help when you're literally in a box full of something that you can't escape from, and then all Invisible Woman has to do is wait till Spider-Man stops breathing, and then she wins this fight.
Well, that's a little morbid. I don't think the Invisible Woman would do that to a child. And the last thing I'll say in Spider-Man's behalf is that we've seen him fight someone who has the ability to sort of get in his head with tricks in the form of Mysterio. We've seen him take down Mysterio. Mysterio's ability to sort of go invisible, and I would say the drones Mysterio used in Spider-Man Far From Home act a lot like I think Invisible Woman's force fields would act. Spider-Man can close his eyes and determine where the force fields are, maneuver around them, and get to Invisible Woman the same way he did to Mysterio. It's going to be difficult, but I don't even think the Invisible Woman will expect him to be able to do it. That's what took Mysterio down, is he underestimated Spider-Man. I think Invisible Woman would do the same thing.
All right, okay. I think Spider-Man would put up more of a fight than I initially thought, but I still just don't think he's going to overcome Invisible Woman. But again, you guys, let us know what you think in the comments who would win in this fight as we move on to our next one. And this one is kind of a fun one. We're going to have Human Torch, Johnny Storm versus new Captain America, Sam Wilson. I guess I'll start with this one because I think this will overall be a very weird fight, especially because, while Sam Wilson is fighting Human Torch, he'll probably think to himself, hey, this guy kind of looks a little bit familiar, and I think that would maybe throw him off a little bit. But besides the look factor of this, I see no way Sam Wilson can win this fight. Human Torch is a powerful dude. He is, I think, one of the most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. He's not only a great flyer, which is a big thing for Sam. You got to be a good flyer to go up against Sam, which Human Torch can definitely do. But he's also like red hot. I mean, like his fiery blast, I think, burn at like 3,000 degrees. One hit from a Human Torch blast will just incinerate Sam. And sorry, Sam, you probably should have taken the Super Soldier Serum by now.
No, Sam does not need the Super Soldier Serum. He is Captain America. First of all, if we want to talk about flight, Sam has the edge in flying over Human Torch by a mile. We've seen Human Torch crash all the time attempting to learn how to fly. He is always getting outflown by people like the Silver Surfer and things like that. He's not actually a strong flyer. He's just a powerful flyer. I think Sam will be able to outmaneuver him as he's been in the military. He's been using his wings for so many years, and he's learned to use them very effectively. That being said, Sam Wilson has a new outfit, given that he is now Captain America. I believe the vibranium technology invented by the Wakandans that is now in his uniform would be able to withstand something like a blast from the Human Torch. We also have to note that the Human Torch, it takes, again, a lot of energy for him to get his blasts that hot. To create that supernova at the end of Fantastic Four took everything out of him. He couldn't even fight anymore. So if he tries to go too hot and it doesn't work against Sam, if Sam has a way to protect against it, especially with his new shield, I think the Human Torch is out of the fight.
I think I will give you that the shield could probably protect against a strong blast, but I'm not so sure about that new fancy vibranium suit that he has, because one, if you're going up against Batroc the Leaper and Batroc's punching you and it seems to hurt you and benefit you, then yeah, any blast from Human Torch is going to do some damage, especially because, that top half of Sam's body is totally exposed. So it's like one quick fire blast to the top of Sam's head or anywhere, really, I think is going to eliminate him. I just think it comes down to the fact that Sam is a man here. He is a normal guy without any powers. And yes, that benefits a lot of people. That's going to benefit him a lot in a lot of different fights, but not when you go up with someone who has such raw power, such uncontrollable flames and fire as much as Human Torch. So Sam can throw his shield all he wants at Human Torch, because that's really the only way that he's going to be able to get close to him is through like a ranged attack, because his human body cannot withstand the heat that Johnny Storm would normally emit. But Johnny Storm could just blast that stuff away. The heat that he radiates around him is enough to stop any ranged attack, and that's all Sam's going to have in this battle.
So I think a big difference in this fight, or something that's going to make a big difference, is the personality of the two characters we're talking about. Sam, yes, is just a man, but he's very aware of that, and he's aware of that when he fights. He jokes that, like, I do what Cap does, just slower. Sam knows who he is. Johnny Storm is literally so full of himself. He gets so distracted. The Fantastic Four loses so many fights because Johnny Storm gets full of himself and thinks he's better than he is, and then he makes a mistake and they wind up losing. And you're right, range attacks are going to help Sam. Sam's going to know this. He has rockets coming out of his wings. He has a drone called Red Wing. For all we know, he could have put a fire extinguisher on Red Wing. I think that'd be pretty smart. And then he could take Human Torch out that way. I think Sam is driven. He's a focused fighter. I think Johnny Storm is distracted and cocky.
No matter what you say to me, I'm just going to think at the end of the day, the raw power of fire is going to beat Sam. But for the third time, it's not up to us. What do you guys think? Let us know in the comments who you think would win between the new Captain America and Johnny Storm. Let's move on to our last kind of matchup here, our last 1v1 fight. We have, I think, a pretty fun matchup, and I'm going to be very interested. You've made great points so far for all of your Avengers, enough to almost convince me for a lot of them, but I'm really curious to see how you pitch The Thing versus Hawkeye, and why you think Hawkeye is going to win this fight against probably the second strongest brute in the Marvel Universe. So let's see what you got.
Okay, listen, I am aware of like Sam Wilson, I am aware of my position in this fight. There's probably not a soul expecting Hawkeye to win, but that is exactly why he is going to have the edge, and he is going to win. The Thing is made of rock, but like a friend of mine once said, it's a perishable rock, mate. Just like Korg, he's made of perishable rock. Hawkeye has every trick up his sleeve. When you're a man on a team of gods, you need to be clever and you need to be resourceful. Clint Barton has arrows made of vibranium. He has arrows that explode. He has arrows that melt things. The Thing is is a brute, you're right, but he's made of rock, and I do believe it's perishable rock. I believe an explosive arrow in the right place could take out his arm, could take the thing's arm off. I believe an arrow that melts something right in the center of him would start to melt the rock that he's made of. I believe Clint Barton is resourceful enough to find a way to overcome the thing.
So this is a fight between a man who's made up of one of the most powerful, impenetrable substances in the Marvel Universe versus one old dude with a bow and arrow with a very limited supply of attacks. And you say that Hawkeye has all these arrows that he's going to hopefully use in order to slow down the thing, or maybe even hurt him. And yes, he could slow down the thing, but the problem with Hawkeye is that he always needs somebody else to close. He always needs somebody else to finish. We've seen him use powerful attacks against people like Vision when he uses those force fields that kind of slows Vision down, where it's not so much to stop him, but in order to just hold him off until a stronger hero can come in and finish the fight. And I think that's going to be the difference here, because if Hawkeye's alone, he's not going to have that final hero to come finish the fight. Yes, he's going to do things that may slow the thing down and in order to stop him and maybe hurt him maybe a little bit with an explosive thing or even sort of a melty arrow or vibranium arrow, but all that's going to do is make the thing mad. And the fact that the thing has a higher rate of durability and just endurance, because that's part of his skill set, compared to just the normal dude that is Hawkeye. Hawkeye can shoot his arrows at the thing all day, every day, but at the end, all it's going to take is he's going to run out. His luck is not going to last him very long, and the thing is just going to come up on him and squash him like a bug.
I agree that if the thing gets anywhere close to Clint Barton, while Clint Barton is actually a really good hand-to-hand fighter against people who aren't made of rock, he would probably win. I agree. If the thing gets close enough, he would squash him. Hawkeye's not going to let that happen. And you're not entirely right. Hawkeye finishes some of his fights, especially when he becomes Ronin, when he loses his family and he becomes that driven person. He takes out entire rooms of people that supposedly would overpower him, and he finishes the job there. He defeats Outriders. He can definitely hold his own. I think Hawkeye, who does not miss, by the way, that is one thing about Hawkeye, is he will not miss. So if he gets far enough away, keeps the thing at a distance, he could literally place an arrow down the thing's throat, have it explode, and I don't think that even a man made of rock would survive that. I think the rock would perish, as Korg would say.
See, again, I just think this is an endurance type of fight. This is, no matter how far away Hawkeye is going to be from him and shooting at him, the thing is going to keep coming. He is an unstoppable force of nature, and he's just going to keep moving forward no matter what. So Hawkeye will shoot at him an explosive arrow. It's like, ow, that kind of hurts, but I'm going to keep going. Hawkeye's going to shoot a vibranium arrow. It's like, ooh, that one stung a little bit. Oh, I'm going to keep going. Oh, and then, I'm out of arrows. I have nothing else in my arsenal, because I can only carry about maybe 20 to 30 arrows in my bow pack, I don't know what that thing's called, for a long period of time, and then eventually the time's going to run out, and Hawkeye is going to be probably, separated from his family once again.
The last thing the last thing I will say about Hawkeye is that he is resourceful. As I said, he needs to be. He's a man on a team of gods. His wife even tells him so. He is the most aware of his surroundings. Depending on the type of location they are in, Hawkeye could definitely get the thing in a position that he wants, to be able to cause some kind of avalanche to fall on the thing, or have the thing fall off a cliff or something like that by placing an arrow in the right place and blowing up the ground he's standing on. I agree, if the thing gets close enough to Hawkeye, fight's over. But I don't think Hawkeye lets that happen. I think Hawkeye could even take the whole fight without having the thing know where he is. He could fire an arrow and then move, and the thing will go to where the arrow came from, and Hawkeye's already in a different place. I think Hawkeye can outsmart the thing. But if he can't, he's going to be squished.
Well, I think out of all of these fights, I actually think this one is the one that I want to see the most, because I think it'd be a very interesting change of pace and a very interesting dynamic between these two fighters. But again, for the fourth time, let us know who you think would win in this matchup, The Thing or Hawkeye. And I think that about wraps up our 1v1 fight. I think these were great fights and great matchups, and hopefully this is something we see eventually down the line. I think Avengers versus Fantastic Four would just make for a great viewing experience overall. So I'm going to wrap up here. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining me today on another episode of CBR Saga. If you guys like this, let us know what you thought down in the comments below, and we'll be back next time with another exciting episode. So thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.